This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about Bitcoin, central banks, and American independence. Obviously making this video in celebration of July 4th, Independence Day, which is coming up this weekend. To talk about this, we're going to have to rewind to a time back when the U.S. did not have senile, old, uneducated presidents, back when we had people like Thomas Jefferson, who's a gentleman and a scholar, and a very learned man. Here's a famous quote from him, and we'll talk about various parts of this. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. Now, there's some debate about various parts of this quote, but most of it actually was said by Thomas Jefferson. It just looks like someone compiled the various pieces. And this quote about inflation and deflation, I'm pretty skeptical that these words were used before the 19th or 20th century. That being said, we're going to analyze this. What we have today is we have rule by Wall Street, by central bankers. And this is the kind of thing that the founding fathers were worried about. And this is exactly what Jefferson is talking about. The money printers and the bankers. The banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. This is a verified quote from Jefferson that was added to that larger quote. And if you've been following my channel, you'll know that this is no longer speculation about something that could happen. In this video about the Great Reset and your house, I talk about how BlackRock and other institutional investors are literally buying up single-family homes across the country using low interest rates and using loans from banks that get their money from the central bank. And this is literally depriving people of property. Obviously, you don't need to sell your house to BlackRock, but if they offer 20, 30, 40% above, this is a huge temptation for people. And in doing so, you may find yourself without a house. And the more houses that are owned by these large corporations and investment funds funded with cheap money from the Federal Reserve, the more this becomes a problem. People actually literally waking up deprived of their houses. And this is part of the kind of globalism that has seeped into the American scene, this sort of thing from the World Economic Forum: you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. What they fail to point out, as I've talked about in other videos, is this is not some Buddhist or ascetic ideal. This is basically, you'll own nothing, but I'll own your house and I'll own you through your student loans and your other debt. And your student loans are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. Another complete travesty in the U.S. Here's another of the original Jefferson quotes that was put into that larger quote. And I sincerely believe with you that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. If we take a look at total public debt, this is a treasury market. This is all the treasuries that are issued to fund government spending. We can see that this has not been a good scene. We've moved up into approximately 28 trillion, and we can see right here, 1971, when we went off the gold standard. Now, what we're doing with this debt now, even someone like Jefferson could never have imagined that there would be a central bank that would be literally printing up new dollars and buying this debt in order to fund deficit spending. So there's a sense in which this debt is being left to our posterity. On the other hand, what's happening right now is the US dollar is being actively devalued to inflate our way out of this government debt. So really, it's a further development of what Jefferson saw. It would have been hard for him to imagine that Americans would actually allow a new central bank to be set up after escaping from the tyranny of centralized rulers like King George III. The other part of this quote is genuine. Bank paper must be suppressed. What this is a description of fiat money, of paper certificates that are issued against gold that is held by the bank. This is the origin of fiat money. This is one of the problems with gold, is it led directly to fiat money because it's very difficult to transport, and as a result it ends up getting centralized in places like banks. The real problem with this is that we got into fractional reserve lending, and paper was being issued by these banks that was not totally backed by gold. And then the whole US government repeated this at a much higher level in the 50s and 60s when the US dollar money supply began to outpace the gold holdings of the US. If we take a look at the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, there's this famous phrase that gold bugs like to talk about, that states shall not make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. This is obviously a precious metal standard. I would say this has been outdated by cryptocurrency and by things like Bitcoin, just as we've moved beyond the paper that the founding fathers wrote on to write mostly on digital things. In the same way, we're transitioning from a gold standard to a fiat standard, and now to a Bitcoin standard. Bitcoin is digital gold, and it's definitely something that if our founding fathers had seen here in the US, they would definitely have been very amenable to it, because what Bitcoin does is it decentralizes power, much in the same way that the US Constitution and the way the founding fathers structured the government. You have the three branches of the federal government, you have all these state rights, etc. So you have this decentralization of power, which is in stark contrast to the British monarchy that the Americans were trying to get away from. In the Second Amendment, we obviously have decentralization of the army, decentralization of weapons. Gun owners are a distributed army. People who say that certain people should own guns are basically saying that other people can own guns and boss them around. So the founding fathers understood decentralization very, very well. Also, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, which includes being able to send money to whomever you want. This is an expression of free speech, and it's an expression of political speech. The great irony, of course, is that the U.S. got rid of kings, but then set up a central bank. This was obviously done overnight. If you want to read the story, I should probably cover this. I haven't read this book in many years, but The Creature from Jekyll Island, about how the Federal Reserve was set up illegally and without really the American people being able to vote on it. So the central banks, fiat money, all of this leads to centralization. It leads to the setting up of new kings. And what we did is we took King George III, whether he was crazy or not, and we replaced him with someone who is crazier, who literally has a button that he can use to print up new dollars. This is just concentrating far too much power in a single office. If you control the currency, you don't need to control the political system. There's a famous Rothschild quote as well. Lest you think that this is just about American patriotism and the American story, I want to really emphasize here that Bitcoin is for the whole world. It's for all people who share the American founding values of liberty, freedom from tyrannical overlords, whether they be kings or central bankers like Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. And it's also for anyone who believes that a government should not be able to arbitrarily debase your savings, the product of your time and your hard labor. You can never get your time back. It's the most limited commodity. And the fact that governments can just arbitrarily print up more money and steal from you, pick your pocket, and steal your very life force by taking away the products of your labor, this is not right. Also, government should not be able to tell you what you can spend your money on and to whom you can send your money. This is what Bitcoin solves. It solves the devaluation problem, and it enables peer-to-peer transactions of value anywhere in the world very quickly and without political censorship. So I wanted to wish you all a happy 4th. If you're Americans, if you're outside, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm going to take a couple days off, and I will see you on Tuesday. I believe it's July 6th. Monday is a U.S. holiday and the stock market will be closed. Of course, Bitcoin never closes as it searches for freedom. It's a truly free market, and it will continue to trade, and we'll continue to watch it. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below, especially if you've read The Creature from Jekyll Island lately and you have some comments on it. Hope you all have a great long weekend, and I'll see you in the next video.